Okay, thank you. Welcome to the Wednesday, March 13th, 2024 Garrison Board of Education Workshop Meeting and Community Budget Forum. Dusty, may you call the roll, please?
Jocelyn Epicello, here. David Delbert,
Here.
Jennifer Harrington Wilson,
She is excused and will be arriving shortly.
Dan Jasnow,
Here.
Courtney McCarthy, here. Ken Schott,
Here.
Sarah Tom.
Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, I have accept agenda changes. Do I have any recommended agenda changes for this evening? Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays. All right. That brings us to President's remarks and the superintendent search update. I want to begin by thanking our board, everyone. It was a wonderful process. We met for initial interviews last Monday and Wednesday. Dusty was kind enough to provide us dinner, which she cooked herself, which really made the process a lot more enjoyable. So we met Thursday evening to deliberate, and we then met again with finalists on Monday. We have reached a decision, and we are in the process of negotiating a contract now. Once that is finalized, we will have more updates for the public. But again, I want to thank everyone for the time and energy put into this process. We greatly appreciated all the candidates who applied, everyone who came and interviewed. But it was really a joy to work with all of you. I know not all boards work as well together, and this was a true pleasure. So thank you so much for your time and energy into this process. I know it feels like that's all we've done for the past 2 weeks. And I'm sure we missed a lot of other things that were happening in the community. It's wonderful to be back here now. All right, go.
Okay, just a few, start with some recognitions. First, I want to thank our jazz ensemble, as well as our art department. Mr. Young is here this evening, but Mr. Roman, Mr. Gonzalez, all took our students to Desmond Fish. And we had a celebration last week of art, as well as music, which is a perfect backdrop to the beautiful artwork that was on display. I could not be there. I had a funeral, but the community just raved about it, the faculty, the parents, and I know it was a beautiful evening. So thanks to all that made that possible, and thanks to Desmond Fish for hosting us. Related to this, Aurora Presser, who is an 8th grade student, has an incredible work of art that is going to be on display at NYSIT Head Regional Office in Terrytown on March 20th. The work is right now posted outside of Mr. Young's art room if anybody wants to take a look. But of course, that evening, I'm sure we'll have good community support for her and her first annual student art exhibition. We're very proud of her.
What time do you have that exhibition?
Oh, my apologies. It'll be on open from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. in Terrytown. It's on White Plains Road. And that, I believe, will be sent out to our community for anyone that would like to attend. Next week, we have the big show. Our students have been working very hard. Aladdin is our play this year, our school musical on the 21st and the 22nd at 7 p.m. And our students are very excited, and I'm sure it'll be a wonderful evening that's happening. Today, we had a visitor from On Board Magazine, a reporter. Her name is Mary Rosenberg. She wrote for the New York Times for about 20 years for the educational section. And Mary covered our nomination for Green Ribbon School. And it was very exciting. She spent well over 2 hours. She met with Ms. Arbor, Mr. Yap, who did the application process, Ms. Mig, as well as several of our students. And she was incredibly impressed by the things that are happening here. She said the timing of the publication will be probably when the announcement is expected, which is on Earth Day, in early April. And I do believe she's going to follow up with Sarah for a comment. And David, I think she may be contacting you
I
as well.
spoke to her today. She said that she's never seen anything quite as remarkable as what we're doing. I said, I'd like to see the article. She said, we can't see it before it's published. I understand.
But it's exciting because it goes out to every school district and, every board member, every administrative staff, every school district in New York State. So that is exciting. And also, we had an incident. There was some high winds earlier in the week. We did have a rather large branch of a tree that fell onto our neighbor's property. We believe the tree is on our property, so we will certainly pay for that removal. But that prompted us to take a good look around the entire campus as well as the field across the street at our trees. I'm going to turn it over to Joe because he acted very quickly and has lined up projects for the upcoming spring break.
Yes. So we do have some trees that we have concern with. Obviously, the one that fell, but there were others. There's what's left of a large willow tree that's by our soccer field. We have a number of trees that we're going to schedule to be taken down and removed, as well as there's a stump that's in the by the playgrounds in the back. We're going to have that ground out as well. So that is one project that we're looking at doing over the break, and then we have the field that is next to the playground in the back. We're going to get that seeded, and then that will be fenced off so that the grass can take. So that we're planning that over the break as well. So we use to take advantage of the breaks when we can and do facilities work around the campus. Thank you.
Thank you both. Do you have any questions for Carl or Joe on the superintendent's remarks? Thank you. We'll move on to board communications and presentations. Now we have the Community Budget Forum and 2024-2025 budget presentation. And Dusty, correct me, on this one, we can allow for some back and forth should anyone in the community have questions. We will also have a budget forum, which I know you'll cover again in the presentation, on Saturday at 10 a.m., which will be here as well. And that also allows for some more informal dialogue if anyone in the community wishes to attend that as well. And you can see the presentation. All right, Carl and Joe, the podium is yours. Oh, that's okay. Sorry, it works a lot. Okay, it's a part where we entertain the public going on.
We apologize. It was
Really like. I'll just go ahead and add them while we're waiting for the budget forum on Saturday. We, of course, it's not a formal board meeting, so we can't have all of us there. For finance committee, I believe we can come and represent. Anybody else who's really interested, reach out to Kent or myself and let us know. We'll see if somebody else doesn't want to go. But we have it, it's great.
I'll take my books.
I don't know.
Saturday, 10 a.m. Jocelyn,
It's hard for me to make it, so if someone else can go. This Saturday?
yeah, I will go and I think Kent will go. So if you want to come, that's great. If not,
Does it go until?
it's about an hour or two. Yeah, it depends. It really allows, it's a really lovely, allows for open dialogue, back and forth.
And so we have like a whole, so I have to like,
Yeah, leave whenever. It's a much more informal way for the community to interact with us. We invite teachers, anybody who wants to come. Teachers are welcome. So it's here in the Learning Commons. Joe and Carl will do their presentation again and then really be able to open it up for dialogue. So, yeah,
I'll do my best.
thank you. It's kind of all I had to fill the time. I don't know if anybody else wants it.
We're almost there.
That's all right.
Yes. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay. Thank you for your patience. We apologize.
So, there have been some changes, not many, since our last presentation, so I'm gonna move rather quickly over things that we covered last time. And, this will be posted, every presentation is posted for people to review. Starts with the objectives, established by our finance committee. Basically, we want it to stay within the cap, have, very accurate, budget lines based on past spending patterns. And we wanted to maintain all of our staffing and programs that we have seen a lot of success come from. We certainly always keep in mind our strategic plan and make sure that what we are budgeting is aligned with our goals and objectives as a district. These just highlight some of the new things that are different from year-over-year budgets. There is a huge emphasis at the state level for the science and reading. It's focused on ELA curriculum. Although our performance is very strong, there's always room for improvement. And I think, a look at alignment from pre-K all the way through 8th grade would be an important initiative for our faculty to focus on. There's PD money in this budget to support that. Something new is a field trip budget. We learned that it's a challenge and a burden on our staff to look for grant money, to collect money from parents, to then go to the business office on top of scheduling and booking trips and all the responsibility and permission slips. So with the budget, it could be a lot more efficient for our teachers. We would want every class grades pre-K through 8 to do at least 1 or 2 field trips per year. We think the budget will support that. It's our estimate. School artwork installation project is basically, we did a wonderful renovation. It was completed last year, but many of the walls are somewhat bare. For example, above the border here, we have this beautiful blank canvas. And we'd like to see a committee established, and we set a budget where they could look at artwork that can beautify our school. Also, the front sign is certainly an end of life. It is rotting, and I'm surprised the wind didn't take down the sign earlier in the week. But that certainly needs to be replaced. And first impressions do mean a lot. And the school is beautiful, and should have a sign out front that matches the beauty of the rest of the campus and school. Roof replacement, that's a big one that Joe will speak about later, but our gym roof is at end of life, and we are budgeting for a full replacement project and refinishing of the gymnasium floor, which hasn't been done since it was installed. So it's basically 20 years old, and that's long overdue. And upgrading our sound system, we've expanded our performing arts programs. We're very proud of that. We have a basic sound system that's actually new. but we would like to enhance it so we can hear our students performing, whether it be in the school musical, the band, and the chorus. There's money set aside to enhance that system, some wireless mics, things such as that. Environmental ed, these are things that are continuing, but these are things that really make Garrison stand out. Environmental ed, pre-K, those programs continue to be supported. We have a good range, and we're proud of this for a small school, but a really good range of collectives and different offerings for our students, particularly at the middle school level. We're also continuing our music in grades 3 through 5. The quality of the performance that you hear at the middle school really starts in the earlier grades. It's important to support that. SEL programs, we've had them in place for quite some time. The budget continues to support them, and that is important now more than ever, in my opinion. And DEI work. We've done a lot of great work, but there is money aside for PD and for DEI materials and things such as that. Now the enrollment. I won't go grade level by grade level because I did that last time. I'll skip right to a change. If you look at the kindergarten line, last time we were here, we had, I believe, 21 students enrolled in kindergarten. That has moved upwards now. We're at 25 students confirmed, registered for next year. That number for me, as an educator, is getting uncomfortably high. All the research points to smaller class sizes in the primary grades really has a long-term impact on student performance and student learning. It's less important at the intermediate and middle school and, of course, for secondary levels. But at kindergarten, we do think it's important, and my recommendation is to split that class into 2 sections. 12 is a smaller class size, and 13, of course, but also we're looking at past trends. We typically pick up more students over the summer. And we actually, Ms. May gave a tour just, I think, earlier this week, family trying to purchase a house, so if that ends up at 27 or 28, we'll be happy that we created 2 sections, I believe. And you don't want to wait until August. Then you're scrambling to find a teacher and put together a classroom, and it's not the right way to do it. We want to be proactive about it. However, the rest of the enrollment numbers seem to be pretty stable. Also for pre-K, you may be curious, we right now have 14 pre-K registered. So we can go up to 18, and it's open through the end of March. So if anyone out there is listening and a pre-K student, you do have till the end of the month to register online. So high school, this is, I guess, important just to pause and go over one more time. We do see increased enrollment in the years ahead. So we have some headwinds financially with our high school enrollment going up, but then after 25, 26, it starts to level off and go down slightly. This has been updated. We're at 28.15 faculty and staff. The 29 represents the additional section of kindergarten. This just elaborating a bit more. Our plan would be to share an aide, because we do think that's possible with such small class sizes. One of the sections will have, we anticipate, a consultant teacher pushing in for a few periods. During that time, when there's 2 teachers in the room, the aide could be with the other section. So we do believe this will work. And we do have the room for it as well. This is another new slide. We talked about this. We'd like to recommend to the board reinstating a transportation coordinator stipend. Joe Jimick has been piling up a lot of responsibilities on Joe, and he's always happy to say yes and do all that he can. But we think to have someone handling the day-to-day, being there to respond to a wire was down on Old Biddy Post Road, I think earlier in the week. Just to step in when those unusual things happen, someone that parents can call and have access to. Joe doesn't have that flexibility with his main job responsibilities. Also, coordinating field trips, with our teachers or athletic events. And there are a lot of changes. You may have a soccer game scheduled, weather changes, it's postponed, we don't have a referee. So there's a lot of changes that happen that are time consuming, and you have to adjust your transportation. So someone to handle this would be very valuable to Joe and to the district and community. And the last big responsibility area is just the maintenance. Driving the buses in, inspections, making sure they're all serviced properly, and that is all time consuming. And we'd like to have someone handle all of that. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Joe for more details about the expenses and the cost of each one. Joe?
Sure. Thank you, Carl. So we have a number of items that are included as a part of the budget, which are not frequent. And then we are going to be starting a program to do capital project work on an annual basis. So we did recently, we're to complete a large capital project, but there was a number of building related items that were not included as a part of the original project plan. And there's a number of these items are building elements and elements of the facilities and the grounds that are beyond their life or their workable life. So the first item that you see on there is a gym roof replacement project for $250,000 for that, and then refinishing the gym floor, wood floors after a period of time. Once the coating starts flaking off, you need to sand that off and refinish. The heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system that we have is currently still it's still being handled by the companies that installed and supplied the equipment. But at some point, that's going to be turned over to the district in full, and it'll need to be maintained. It does need a high level of skill associated with managing that, and it's also proprietary controls from the manufacturer, which is trained. So we believe that we're going to have a service contract to cover that equipment to make sure that it continues to work. And then we have this system, because it moves a lot of air and a lot more air than the existing system that it replaced. There is a high amount of utilities use associated with it, and there's additional monies for electric included in the budget for that. And then the sound system upgrade that Carl previously mentioned. So the tuition increases that we see that are driven by the enrollment slides that we saw earlier, that's the main component. The transportation contract, we need to put out to bid. And so we have an estimate for what that might end up to be. And then some other items that you see there for arts and education and professional development for the new initiative for the governor for reading. And there's some other items there that are also included in the budget. Some environmental related items and the signs and the artwork. So the cost of the additions to the budget since the last revision that we reviewed was the transportation coordinator stipend and the elementary teacher salary, including and benefits. So that's what that is reflected in, and the year-over-year increase is $984,748. This is transportation. The 24-25 is estimated based upon a contract settlement. So we don't, once the bid is known, we'll know what this actually is, but we probably will have to adopt the budget before the bid comes back. So we have to have an escalator in there for that. So what we're planning to do for this transportation bid is we're going to bid this out, and the bid will stay out open between 4 and 6 weeks, and we're going to make a 1-year award for 24-25, and then depending upon how 24-25 goes, in the bid we'll have specifications and rates for for 5 years that will request that. And if the year progresses well and we like this contract, because it could be the same contract that we have, but it could be a new contract. And depending upon how that goes for that first year, we would then ask for permission in the following budget season to continue that contract for a full 5 years. Inflation, obviously, inflation is high, and but it's trending in the right direction. So, Save Harmless. I'm sure if you've listened to the news at all in New York State, that's discussed every day. The current budget proposals, the one house proposals for New York State are out, and that removes Governor Hochul's proposal. The one house budgets all take that out, and they put Save Harmless back in. But based upon the governor's comments, it's probably going to be fought back and forth, and we may or may not get a budget on time from the state. So we're going to base our budget and our revenues on not including the hold harmless, because we probably won't know in time for us to adopt our budget. But that's currently that may be restored. And just to kind of remind everyone, is the tax rate in Garrison is very low. There's only one district where it's lower in terms of a rate in those 5 counties. So I think there's been a lot of lobbying across the state to fix the Save Harmless, and most likely it will get fixed, but we've also made formal requests for grants and aid to our Assembly, Dana Levenberg, and our Senator Rob Wilson. So we're looking at extending our high school tuition contracts. We currently have one at Putnam Valley that expires in 2028. And we have a tentative agreement with Highland Falls to extend the contract that we have through there through June 2029. We have made a proposal to Haldane to extend the contract through June of 29. And one of the things that's different about their contract in comparison to the other two is there's a clause in their contract that every year they reserve the right to negotiate the 7th grade tuition for the next group coming in. So we have a contract that we signed in September and it goes through what's the end date of the contract that we have.
So we've been amending our contract to cover the cohorts, I believe, and that's our next item on the agenda for discussion. So I don't want to get too much into detail now, but so this one goes through June 30th, 2027.
Okay.
And make sure that we cover every 4 years, essentially.
Right. So each year, though, they have a clause in there which allows them to adjust the rate for the next class.
Yes,
That's not covered.
Yes, so this current 7th grade is not covered. The rate that they agreed to is just for the 8th graders moving on.
So if it's the district's desire to have all the contracts to be the same, because then it removes any kind of competition between them. And then if it's approved, it would mirror the tax cap formula, which is 2% of the rate of inflation, whichever is less. So the tax cap, the state determines the growth factors. That's 2% of the rate of inflation, whichever is less. So it's 2%. It's 4.37. And the big item there is the difference in the capital tax levy amount, and that's due to the transfer to capital to cover the gym roof project. That's the difference in that exclusion. So those are really the only items that we have to worry about in our our calculation, we don't have pilots currently in the district, so that's not an issue. So we have there, and then there's our levy calculation, and the maximum allowable under the cap is $11,196,981, which is $475,000 increase, or 4.4%. And are we seeking an override now? We're not. It requires a simple majority. This is the aid showing the governor's proposal. We imagine that the foundation aid, a lot of that will be restored. Yeah, our foundation aid in the current year is $592,000. If the governor's proposal gets implemented into law, it would be $358 for foundation aid, but it's a big decrease. So hopefully that is not the way it ends up. I don't think it is, but like you said, I believe that the governor's budget or the adopted budget will be later than the statutory date of the 31st. So our budget doesn't require any reserves to support next year, only the undesignated fund balance. Then most likely in May timeframe, Finance Committee will look at reallocating any additional undesignated fund balance to the reserves. Because if you remember, we had a difficult budget and had to do an override and use some reserves in the last couple of years, and it would be advantageous to replenish some of those reserves for the future, so that in case we need them, they will be there for us. So if we have estimates for what the use of fund balance would be in the year, we don't think necessarily we're going to use all the $684,000 we had designated for the current year, and then we most likely won't use all of the $967,000 that we have built into the budget for the following year. So this is the overall budget. You know, you see the amounts there and the changes. A lot of the changes are resulted from the things that we discussed earlier. So let's talk a little bit more about the gym roof. So what this does is it allows us to do the gym roof replacement, which is needed, and not incur any financing expenses, because the district is considered a wealthy district by New York State. So the amount of aid that we get back is only 10% of what we spend, and the interest rates that you're looking at for a district this size is probably around 4%. And on a project such as this, where it's $250,000, it may add $45,000 to the cost when you amortize that over a 15-year life. So if we don't have to do that, it's advantageous to not do that. So that's why I included as part of the budget. So we do have some, the gym roof that we're talking about is from the 2002 edition. It's a shingle roof. It is when you're on the roof, you can see that the shingles are coming apart, kind of delaminating, and we do have active leaks. This is some of the, so we have some leaks in the mechanical room, which is above the gym and the bathrooms, and that's the athletic director's office. So it's leaks into there as well. But the other thing the reason why we want to do this roof project is because of the advocacy and the lobbying our legislators, we have been approved for a CREST grant, which stands for Community Resiliency, Sustainability, and Technology, and that will reimburse the district for half of the cost of the roof. So because we have this grant opportunity, that's another good thing. We do have to budget for the entire amount, because the reimbursement of the roof is done based upon everything being completed and filed with all of our agencies before we would get that. So full amount is budgeted. And we're gonna get 50% back on it, whereas we would normally only get 10. So that's a very good thing for us to be able to do. And then you see some examples of the gym floor. The finish is coming off of there, and we need to redo that. There are our specialized firms that do this work, and this would be something that we would bid out so that it could be done over the summer, most likely. That's the budget in 3 components, adjusted for the new numbers. Now, will Save Harmless be restored? Most likely, but we need to wait until we see it in the budget. One other thing that's new, does appear that in at least the proposals that you're looking at more funding for pre-kindergarten. It's currently $5,600 a student. It could go up to $10,000 a student if the one house proposals get adopted. That would be a good thing. So these are some unknowns. The private schools and special education, those change on a regular basis. And as those change, we have to add and subtract the costs as needed. And private schools that are within the transportation distance of 15 miles, they can request transportation from the district, and those requests are due back by April 1st. So based upon the numbers, we have to allocate $967,000 of undesignated to stay under the cap. If the vote is defeated, we got to go back and do a revote on the 18th. Or we could use the same budget or a revised one, or they could do a contingent. Contingent is a 0%, and it would increase the budget gap by $475,000, and it would require that much in additional cuts to balance the budget. That would be program and administration staffing. And then we would have to stay under the administrative cap, which is basically the ratio of administrative expense versus program expense. So there's several propositions. Some of that are related to the tuition, and then obviously the budget amount is the first one. To do a contract with Haldane, contract with Highland Falls, and then this fourth one, which is a new one that's added to the list here. Currently, there is only 2 dates where people that are not registered can come in to register to vote. If they're not, you can be registered to vote through the county, or if you're not registered to the county, you can register to vote in the school budget and board election directly in the district. This proposition would allow us to have continuous registration all year long if it's adopted, with the exception of the 5 days before the budget vote. You can't register in that period, the 5 days right before the budget vote. But the rest, you could register the whole. That would be a good thing and make it easier for folks to register to vote. So we have a community forum in this room on Saturday, and then our next budget presentation is going to be April 10th, which is when we're going to ask the board to adopt the budget and the property tax reform. And then if you're interested in running for the board, your petitions are due back on the 22nd. And then that is when the district can get absentee ballot or early voter ballot applications. That's a new item. And then the if the, this would be the last year where we would have voter registration on just 2 days in May. Hopefully if that proposition passes, then you'll be all year round. And then we have the budget hearing. And right after the budget hearing, a newsletter will be mailed out. And the budget vote is on the 21st. That's it.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Carl, for the presentation. Now that I open it up to the board for questions on any items in the budget, new, old, whatever you'd like to hear more about, and save them all for Saturday. If you want to. Anything?
Just one question. Why are you optimistic that the governor's budget cut, seems to be short?
Because there are too many districts that are negatively impacted by the cut. It's close to 40% of the school districts are negatively impacted by that the elimination of safe harmless, because essentially if the safe harmless provision increased foundation aid every year for a decade or more, so it added a little percentage on. They're going to take the formula. If you use her proposal, it's to take the formula as it was frozen in 2008 and return to that number without all those additions that occurred over the decade. So there's a number of districts that are like Garrison in that the formula doesn't say that Garrison should get more money because of the property wealth and the wage wealth and the low need of the students in terms of low poverty and low special education needs. So when you put all those together, we shouldn't get the formula. We should get the 300,000 as opposed to the 500,000 we're getting. But the governor is saying, well, we're gonna fix it, and it's gonna be to the formula. Well, there's too many districts where that would affect.
Is she trying to reallocate money from these wealthier districts like this one to poor districts?
I'll just speak a little bit on this. I've seen some of the advocacy that the School Boards Association has been doing on this. And I think one of the things that struck out, that may have been part of the initial intent, but there was also some push to have districts use their reserves. And I think one of the things that's so challenging about that is that we're also restricted on the amount of reserves we can hold. So, if you're going to say, okay, use your reserves and make up the deficit because you're holding money, well, districts like us have been using our reserves to get through things like COVID and other challenges. And then you also have the issue of we're only allowed to hold 4% technically under what the mandate says. So if you don't change the mandate and you change the formula at the same time, a lot of districts are really stuck. And also, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of districts are experiencing like ESSER funds and COVID, basically what they call COVID money rolling off this year as well.
Yes.
So there's a huge cliff for these districts.
Yeah. So if you added programs or added staffing with COVID money, and there are a number of districts that did, then you have to have a plan for when that COVID money disappears.
But it hit a lot of the rural districts really hard. That's what's going to be concerning, is it doesn't seem to, from what I'm hearing, it's not, just really districts in need are getting more. Howland's getting more. We're getting a lot less, but Mount Vernon's getting a lot less too.
So just curious, so what's your best case?
Well, if I could add, David, additionally, the original question was what gives us optimism? Just yesterday, the Senate released its one house budget proposal, and the Assembly did the same. Both basically recommended not only maintain the current levels, but actually continue safe harmless. So that would be adding another 3% in the year ahead. So when you have both houses pushing back on the governor's proposal, it gives us some reason to be optimistic here. And again, I think Sarah maybe mentioned, some wealthier districts are impacted, but yes, Mount Vernon also, I think, is losing well over $1 million. The formula itself, there's a really strong argument that it is so antiquated that it needs to be studied and updated. So I think either the Senate or the Assembly actually proposed $1 million to study the formula itself and try to come up with something that's more equitable. So, we don't know the state, I think they did find some extra revenue about a week ago.
Yes.
I'm not sure how they found it, but that was also reason to be optimistic, but we know there are a lot of competing interests.
So I have two quick questions. The first one is related to the kindergarten. So I am in total agreement that 25 is too big a class. But I did, and I don't know the history of this, but I did a little research, and there are 20 homes on the market at Garrison right now, 17 of which have 3 or more bedrooms. So we could end up with, an additional 17 students, or we could end up losing. What happens if come July, we're down to 19 kindergartens? And we've already hired the teachers. What do we do?
Great question. So that's, I'm a big believer, the board has heard me say, if you want to hire a teacher, get out there early before the other districts. I think once you make a commitment to someone, then it's unfair to break that agreement. However, Jen, I think if we post it, if the board is in agreement and we adopt this budget in April with the 2 sections of K, we have to advertise. It probably would take 3 or 4 weeks before we have someone prepared to hire. I think at that point, we'll examine that number. If it's still at 25 or it bumps up to 26 or 27, then we'll have the confidence to go forward. But if we lost 2 or 3, maybe we hold off on the hire.
Well, and with the number of houses on the market, we might end up with a much larger other rate.
Yeah.
So I mean, I am definitely in favor of putting that extra teacher into the budget. Okay. And then my other question was that you noted on one of the slides that the arts and education would go through BOCES. I'm wondering if the ELA PD would go through BOCES as well to get the aid on that.
Yes. In fact, Mr. Yap set that up. We've already secured, knowing there will be tremendous competition for ELA consultants. We've already signed the contract and started to actually set up dates. So we're ahead of everyone else.
Couple questions.
Go for it.
Can I ask questions about the line by line?
Absolutely.
So on the line by line, you're showing a little bit of an increase in electricity costs.
Yes.
We've obviously spoken a bit about solar, and I believe we have a negotiated rate currently. So does that increase reflect our current negotiated rate, or is negotiated rate ending, and how would community solar impact that?
So the negotiated rate does end next January, and we are basically locked out until then. We did research our existing agreement that we have for power purchasing the generation of power, because that's the part you can get negotiated. So it is estimating it based upon the rates that we currently have, and that we believe we need additional capacity for electric. So we're estimating it the best we can with the information we have, in that we are planning it based upon 5 months of worst case usage and 5 months of not worst case usage, which is probably slightly more than we need.
And in terms of the community solar piece, have we made any progress in looking what those rates might look like?
We're thinking a 10% discount there.
Below
So
our
the budget advisory committee took a look at that very carefully by Jen. And so come January, we could see a potential 10% decrease.
But is it 10%? Because I know Joe had negotiated a very low rate. Is it 10% off that low rate?
Well, we have to see once.
See where it is when we're ready
Yes.
to roll.
Yes. And there are multiple ways of doing this. If the solar number comes in significantly better than what we can get in another way, there'll be more of it will be pushed off to solar. It just depends on what the mix is at the time, and it is a volatile market. I think one of the things to keep in mind is when we had to procure that that original contract was right after, the, invasion of Ukraine. It was like right at that time. And that, and we were at market and we were paying 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So we were able to obviously cut that in half and get a number that was workable. But it will depend a little bit upon what the rates are at the time.
Another question. So the line by line also does a bit of an increase for some outside contractors. Would those be outside contractors outside of the capital projects that we're talking about? Or-
Yeah, so that's to increase, to have an outside contract for the HVAC. That's a big part of it. And that and the other item that's in there is the gym floor resurfacing.
And that's not a capital expense.
No, because that's considered a maintenance item.
And then last question on the, so on the leaks that we're getting from the gym roof, is that causing any additional damage to electrical systems or anything like that? And are we planning for anything, any of those types of contingencies with capital allocation?
Electric, no, but it is something that we're managing. But obviously, the sooner we can get it done, the better. So the first step in that is issuing an RFP for an architect, and that's about ready to go out on the street very shortly. And then once that is done, then we can start all the formal stuff.
Thank you.
I have two questions. First, on the kindergarten section again, if we are planning to split, we look at 12, 13, we obviously have some room to go up there if we need to. If we look like we're going to have open seats, kindergarten's a great time to start in a new district. We have a policy that allows us to accept non-resident tuition students for, I think right now the rate is $16,825. I believe it's a good deal and less than some of our neighboring competitors. So is there a way to spread the word that we may have some seats open and to offer tours, have people come get excited about the wonderful program for
We do get a fair amount of cold calls where people are looking in the area and they call up Garrison and they ask about us. I get them in the business office, they get them in the front office. People call and they ask and I say, well, you got the lowest taxes in the region, you might want to look here.
Can you still have a seat in kindergarten now?
So Sarah, to your, going back to your question, you could be advertising. I think advertising is a little bit of a challenge. Word of mouth, and we've had some, come here.
Joey doesn't think it's a problem.
Well, Joey, taking some notes on this for your next article. Maybe we'll be in the Highlands Current. Yeah, we welcome, certainly we welcome the tuition. I think, word of mouth has been good. I think it probably would come from one of our major districts. I don't think I traveled that far. So keep getting the word out.
Yeah, the existing students we have are from Lakeland. Both of them.
But seriously, is there a way to advertise in publicly known that space? Why not?
Probably in local newspapers, maybe. This way. And look, I don't know if we have something on the website. I don't think we do.
I think you have to be careful because if you don't split the kindergarten, then you can't make promises until you know what.
Yeah, that is true. Although I think I do agree that historically we've always had an increase.
Well, we could get 30 tuition kindergartners.
30 would be, yeah.
But our policy is clear, very thoughtfully done, that if accepting a tuition student causes us to increase staff, then we can decline. So I think we're safe there. Okay, we'll brainstorm some more about getting the word out.
And then this is a good budget year for us. I know we've discussed that in finance here. We're coming off some very difficult years. It was a lot of hard work to get here.
Yes.
There's one, which thank you so much for all the work to get here. And thank you to the board for all the decisions that went into that. We talked previously at previous meetings about, this is a while ago, about possibly putting a bathroom in the school course. I know you don't have numbers yet, but I think that is something, that was on the committee that we'd like to see, and perhaps if we could get numbers, that might be something we could look at adding, which would make the forest more accessible to students. And teachers, I think teachers were one of the groups that really would like to see that in there.
So there are a number of considerations that are involved. We have to make sure that we meet all the regulatory requirements, and that may involve an architect. I don't really have any number right now would be a guess, but it is possible that before we have to adopt the budget, we could have a number or a placeholder in there for that.
And then that would just increase the number we're taking from, if we were to add
Undesignated, yeah.
something from the undesignated. And then my next question is really in support of all of us, and to make clear to the public, we're looking to take about 967,000 out of undesignated fund balance. And we're comfortable with that because we have 1.4 million currently in undesignated fund balance.
Right.
So, which is well over the 4%. That puts us at 13%, or about 13 or 14%, if I recall correctly from the audit, which I do read routinely. So, but I think that's just something to really remind people, is that we have this sort of cushion this year, and a lot of these are one-time expenses, and that's why we can look at that number and be comfortable, and look at some of these other one-time expenses. But again, Saturday, we important to remind people of that too. We don't want to necessarily see that all the time with reoccurring others.
The one item that most likely will be occurring if it's successful is doing projects every year on a capital basis, but that is an exclusion from the cap, so it doesn't put us any pressure on the budget.
Do you have any other questions on the budget for Carl and Joe as presented before we move on?
Just one more.
Yeah.
This is in the good problem category, but so you mentioned the increase potentially in state funding for pre-K.
Mhm.
That's completely state funded right now. That
No.
program.
No.
Isn't partially funded on
It
the
only-
addition.
Yeah, so it only covers $5,400 per child, and that does not cover the cost of the staff that's in there. So you need to have, when you have, there's a reason why we use 18 as a cap for the enrollment, because we have, I think, 22 allocations from New York State. But once you get above 18, then you need 2 aides and the teacher. So when you add the salary and benefits and everything for the staff that are in there, the $5,400 doesn't cover the cost of that staff. So the district subsidizes part of it. And so there's a general fund expense for the pre-K program, and there's what's called a special aid expense, which is where the grant money comes in from the state, and that's where the other part of the expenses. If they increase that to $10,000, obviously that will reduce the district's component, but that still isn't enough to cover the cost either at 10,000 a student.
What I'm hearing from other districts just on these advocacy calls, a lot of them are, you could use that money allocated by the state to pay for a program outside of your school building necessarily. So you could fund a seat in a private preschool if you'd set up the contract that way.
Yeah.
Which is what other districts are doing and don't have the space. We are kind of unique, and it was really nice to hear about, we saw the presentation in the fall about how successful the pre-K program has been in preparing kids for kindergarten. But to have it in building too, it seems to be very unique with our own staff, which is something I had been aware of for some of these calls. So
There is a requirement though that we do have to fulfill before we get the grant. The next year is we have to put out a RFP for to give preschools the opportunity to be a New York State funded preschool, to pick up potentially some of the other seats. The challenge with that is they have to meet the same criteria that the school has to meet in order to get that. So their building has to meet all the state criteria, and their staffing has to meet all the state criteria. And they have to have a level of training that's appropriate, that guarantees them the certifications that they need. So you have to have certified staff, a building that meets all the New York State school codes, and all that. So we do have to, as a requirement of continuing the grant, we have to put out an RFP that asks for proposals for outside organizations to run a program that's affiliated with Garrison. So that's just that is a requirement that we've been informed that we need to make sure we.
Any other questions? Thank you so much again for the presentation. We're looking forward to Saturday. All right, we will now move on to our. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. That's right. This is the forum. Public, if you have questions, I would like to invite you up to the podium and we'll answer them, please. I do want to get them recorded, so we would be happy to hear from anyone. Again, we will not record one on Saturday, but you're welcome to come up now if you're here. Share for the reminder, Jessica.
Unlike other times in board meetings, we can actually answer.
Yeah, we'll answer the questions too.
Not only can you answer, you can ask, you can get an answer.
All right. Come on Saturday if you'd like to ask questions then. Next, we have a discussion of the Haldane term of instruction contract. Now, I put this on here in reference to Haldane's discussion of our contract at their March 5th meeting. I hope you all had a chance to take a look at it. So I think just to preface this, it's important to go back and sort of talk about where we were when we started talking about these 5-year contracts. And I also wanted to correct a few things from the meeting last week as well. When Haldane came to us a number of years ago and said they wanted to go from their current year-to-year contract, which had been about $13,000 at the time per student, which was very low, especially compared to their NRT rate. And instead of increasing by 2% every year, they wanted to go to the NRT rate. We pushed back and said we would like 2 years to do that. So we did an in-between step. By the time we got to the final step was the year we needed the override. And it was becoming very clear that we were struggling to make the jump from, I believe the estimate at that time was about 22,000.
Yes.
And there was a number of children who had already committed to Haldane. And we were struggling to pay for it, essentially. So it was really becoming a budget discussion of, well, can we afford things in the K-8 or are we paying tuition? In order not to be in that boat again, and also in order to, when we send a class, guarantee that the increase is by 2% every year. So for example, the rate for next year's class, which is negotiated for this year's 8th grade, is $17,162. That was an amendment to their current 5-year agreement, which was approved on September 5th, 2023. That guarantees a 2% increase for the years those students will be in high school. We're going to try and do these agreements every 2 years so that we continue to cover kids for 4 years as they go to school. That's the idea. Why do our voters have to vote on this, but Haldane doesn't? We're the ones sending the money. We provide the revenue. So they just accept money, so they don't have to get voter approval like we do to enter into a multi-year contract. So I know in that discussion last week, there was some confusion. Haldane is currently in a multi-year contract with us. I know it is unique and different because there aren't a lot of K-8 districts around. But we do have one that began dated June 21st, 2022. And it ran from June 21st, 2022, expiring June 30th. 2027, and it does include a rate per year. Now, unlike, as Joe mentioned, our other high schools, Haldane is asked to renegotiate the rate every year. We would love to remove that clause, unless anyone objects tonight. That was our proposal going forward to them, to remove the clause so that it mirrors the other districts. We think this works for everyone, Haldane included. I know their NRT rate is slightly higher than what we are currently paying. I think the estimated NRT rate for next year for Haldane, we're estimating at $18,982. Again, these are estimates because the real number doesn't come in until December. I know, and they're based on a ton of fun information, which we're going to get into on the NRT formula. depending on how many questions you really all have.
Well,
Doing a ton of research on what is the NRT formula, or what do we call the Seneca Falls formula? Because that's sort of been the debate is, do we pay that per cost per student rate to these schools, or do we negotiate our own rate? It is in our benefit, obviously, to negotiate our own rate because it's more stable for us. We can predict what we're going to spend on the students. So I think that's a really important point. If anybody else has any thoughts?
Yeah, obviously it's a really special relationship. So it's on board, I have kids at Haldane, it's when everybody wants, our kids attending Haldane is really good with. It keeps our bond strong, and certainly we don't ever want that to go away. And 2 years ago, they did come through for us. We were in a terrible situation. They could have said no, and we would have had to cut other things, and they didn't. They came to an agreement. But I think going forward, we have relationships with the other two schools. Doesn't make a ton of sense to pay a different rate to Haldane. It just doesn't for us, for our students, for our community. We don't want that to be a budget item every year, something we have to talk about. We have Haldane X and these schools Y. Why is that the case? All the schools are special to us. They all have different qualities that make them unique to our students and a great choice for our students. And cost I just don't think it should come into the factor. I mean, we are, despite having good budget times right now, we still run a really tight ship. If you look at class sizes, our elementary and middle school class sizes are about 20% higher than we're not frivolous with our money. As everyone at Haldane knows, yeah, we have a lower tax rate, but we run a tight ship. We're not wasting our money, and we can't really afford to have high school tuition be unpredictable. It can swing our budget by more than annual tax cap. If we wait to see that number every year, I just did some calculations. We didn't know what it's going to be, and all the schools were at their 2023, 24 estimate probably would blow out our tax cap number. So we just can't do it. But most importantly, it really comes down to the kids and the parents and the students. It's having a year-to-year rate makes it kind of something that, although we all think it's going to happen, we all want to make it happen, it's not locked in. And I have a 7th grader, he wants to go to Haldane. He would be devastated not to go to Haldane, and I'm sure he will go to Haldane. But to leave it up to a negotiation every year, it just doesn't make sense for them. And I would just ask them to consider our relationship, consider the fact that the NRT rate this year is within 10% of what we're paying. We're paying a fair rate that the other schools, one school has a much lower rate, one school has a much higher rate, but this rate is really in the middle and really fair, I think, for what we're contributing to that.
I think that's a good point. My concern is also that the NRT rates fluctuate. As you mentioned, the other schools moving around. I'm going to get a little into the formula here, but it's basically taking that, the expenditure 7 through 12, minus special education, minus interfund transfers, and a few other things. And then dividing it by the number of students enrolled 7 to 12. Now, if you go even look at some of the Haldane meetings from the fall, there was one in October 17th. They're seeing a real decline in enrollment, so much so that they're combining 5th grade into their middle school in order to keep their programs up. So when you're looking at classes like their current 6th grade is about 40, 41, the number is going to be lower when that cohort reaches 7th and 8th grade. The number of students they have divided into what is a larger budget. They're receiving more state aid than we are. They're also going out for a capital project that is anticipated to raise their taxes 7.97% over 3 years. That will be factored into it. So I'm worried about the movement of that NRT rate year to year if we continue to look at that as the barometer. Again, we're open to negotiations if they come back with something else, but I do agree with Ken that keeping all 3 schools the same. And of course, the other really important thing here is if the NRT rate isn't at our contractual rate, we can never pay above the NRT rate. So say we're locked in at the other schools for $17,162 for next year for all students. If one school is under that, we can't pay that full amount by state law. So we pay a little bit less. That goes into the fund balance, which is lovely. But it does keep it equal when the kids go tour too. So we're not sitting here saying, well, it'd be great if more kids went there because it's cheaper to us. and the taxpayer. So those are just some things I'm thinking about, right? Really breaking down this formula and looking at why it really conferred us long term. And then,
I just want to, I completely agree. And I can understand, even that it's extremely stressful for each grade to wonder. Our taxpayers have asked us as a board to look at our long-term financial planning. And this is something that factors in. I don't think we're asking for anything outrageous, especially or unusual, considering two schools have agreed to it. And it's also worth noting that last year we adopted our own non-resident tuition policy, and at a set rate, we do not charge the full NRT rate that we could by the Senate calls for.
And we charge the same amount that we ask to pay the high schools.
we matched with there, yes. And we also had that wonderful bridges program that we put in with housing, that instead of going to the special education NRT rate with them, which we could have done, we split the cost down the set, which makes sense because it benefits all the kids in the program and both districts. There's no need to charge our neighbors that much to run that program when we can just divide the cost. Anyways, so the next question may be, where are we going from here with this discussion? I think we would like to really continue to reach out to Haldane. That's up for us how we do that. And I know Carl's been working with our attorneys to get this draft in front of them for the new contract. And hoping to move forward. You know, in the past, we've sent Kent to board meetings. We can do that again if the board's in favor. I can. I'm happy to reach out again to their board president and see that different constituent or different members of their board. We can start setting up those meetings again if anybody wants to attend them.
What's the timeline for wanting them, like, by our next meeting, so that we could have it on our ballot?
Well,
Then
we can put it on our ballot regardless. I think part of it is my initial email to the and sort of what kicked this off was letting them know we were talking about this. I don't like putting things in the budget agenda where we're talking about a proposition at a neighboring school that we have a wonderful relationship without letting them know, because maybe they're not following along and reading every agenda or every presentation as closely. That's just polite. And I know if you watched the Valley budget presentation, for example, they included us as a revenue line and talked about all the money they're getting from us, which is really appreciated. So they're clearly aware and they're aware of our relationship. O'Neill always invites us to their budget presentations. I haven't gone as much this year because we had the superintendents, but it's lovely to be included in that conversation. So I think part of our job as a school that's sending them out is to reach out. So we can talk about more about how we do that beyond just sending Kent to sort of plead our case.
And we send Kent because you're the liaison.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Not any other reason.
No.
Just exceptionally persuasive.
Right.
And if there's other things we want to, reach out to them, ask them.
Is it on their next agenda for a discussion?
I haven't seen, no, I haven't, not that I've noticed. We can look that up for sure.
Whenever it is, so whenever it is, I mean, it's we all decide we want some or two people to go.
We can offer, I can definitely send an email.
And then Justin, in my conversations with Phil, to answer your initial question of, what is our deadline, it really is arguably, you could say the fall, right? Because in the fall is when our students and all three high schools have done a wonderful job welcoming our students, transition days, presentations, and they've also all added parent evenings, which is an extra evening for their faculty. So we appreciate that, and it really helps us to make informed decisions for our children. The counselors start planning those transition days and those presentations in the fall. The summer's always difficult with two boards. It's hard enough getting one board together in the summer, but two boards is difficult. So it would be really good to have this resolved before the end of the school year or sooner. Phil Bedante does understand that. What I heard the Haldane board say, though, at the end of their last meeting was that they just need a bit more time to They just didn't feel prepared to make a decision at that meeting. And, hopefully that bit of more time is a few weeks.
Perhaps if they are bringing it back, then I can reach out with your permission to their board and just say, we are happy to send a representative to your next discussion to answer any questions you may have. There seemed like there were a lot of questions coming up that they couldn't answer. For example, what rate do we charge? Do we accept NRT students? Things like that. So perhaps that might be helpful.
And their next meeting is March 19th. I have posted it again.
Okay, I could reach out and ask and just see if that would be helpful if they're looking to move it along. I do think it's useful because if you get to the fall, I know in the past we've been like, they have a date, we don't have a contract or a number from them, and it's a little bit challenging for those students who are wondering whether they get to go see Haldane or just the other two.
The other thing we did, I think, which has been really positive, is that we moved the date for declaring where you want to go up to the end of the year so that it could be included in budgets the following year. In the past, it was in March. That was something that made it, again, like when that date, we didn't know what the number would be at NRT until the following year, and then we didn't even know how many kids are going. So all of this is just, I think, for both districts, positive as far as budget.
Yeah, and again, I saw that in the Putnam Valley presentation, your Garrison listed out where actually the money we bring in is greater than their state aid increase. So we're in a nice high position there on revenues, which I like to see. That's also a fun board meeting if anybody wants to watch it. So, all right, so it sounds like we have consensus. I will reach out and just say we can offer Ken for any further discussion or anyone else who is available. If Ken's not available, he can afford someone else to go in his stead, but to answer questions and sort of talk about our relationship and see what other information they need from us in either their public session. And, I know Carl has regular communication with Phil, but if even one board member has a question, needs to come meet with, a couple of us, perhaps we can make ourselves available as well, so that we make sure their question levels are. All right. Okay. Go ahead then and move on from that contract to the school calendar second review and approval. I'm going to go ahead and read the recommended action first, and then we'll open it for questions and discussion. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby approve and adopt the 2024 to 2025 school calendar as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Does anyone have any questions? Carl, is there any follow-up on the school calendar?
The only change is a minor one. The second parent-teacher conference days were initially scheduled for March 6th and 13th. Our teachers asked for a bit more time because they will have better information a few weeks beyond that. So the teachers, the GTA came back very thoughtfully, requesting the 20th and the 25th for parent-teacher conferences. I do think it's wise to listen to our teachers. They are the ones with our students and collecting that data that they share at the parent conference. Other than that, it's the same calendar that I presented last week.
Thank you. And I apologize. There was a question, Carl, that I meant to bring to you. The February break. The union feels strongly about keeping this February break, I believe. Is that correct?
The GTA does, but I will also, we did during one of the capital project years lose February break. And I recall even from our parent community that they were not happy with the loss of February break.
I wanted to put that.
But the teachers very much are in favor of keeping.
Does anyone else have any other questions on the calendar as presented or thought?
I just had one question.
Yes.
Is the +1 PO day summer? Not sure what that.
Jen, what we do there, that's something we started about 2 years ago. We have as you know, a long list of required trainings for our teachers. We use the Vector online PD system. So James Yap every year sets up the required trainings. They usually amount to about 5 or 6 hours in total. And what we say to the teachers, one of their contractual conference days, we give them flexibility. They may sit down and do them all in one day over the summer, or they may
But if they
do one a
actually, they
week.
complete them before they come.
As long, it's really helpful to have them fully trained and certified before the school year begins. So that was mutually agreed upon with the teachers union, and it's working out very nicely.
Great. Any other questions, or should I go ahead and move to a vote on the calendar? All in favor, adopting, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention. Next up, we have even more exciting, the 2024-2025 board meeting schedule, first review and discussion. So a couple things here. There is a board retreat penciled in for July 13th. That's a Saturday, correct? So anybody who wants to weigh in on that, I'm not looking at you two, as to whether that date works or if you'd like to shift, you can think about it and then let me know. But I think it's going to be really important, as we will likely have new board members, to ensure that we have a day that we can come together for some learning. Maybe there's some other topics. We will also have a new superintendent. So there will probably be a lot of things we wish to cover at that time.
So I will just say on the record not to be in any trouble, but I will not be here.
Okay.
That week.
Send me dates that work then, Saturdays, or if you guys want to move to a different one. But let's start with that. Then everybody send me what works for you, so we don't have to hash through it right now. And I'll try and reach a common date so we can get it in there. That was just really a placeholder at this point, but I do think it's going to be an important date. And it can't be before, you gotta go after that. All right. And if you have any objections to any of the other meeting dates, it's a birthday, it's something else, let us know sooner rather than later. Suggest you've put a lot of work into this already. There are some mandated dates on here, obviously, that we have to hold.
So I have noticed that some of the other districts for the OCs budget vote do it via Zoom and they advertise it.
Are you allowed to do that?
I know.
Because I thought you weren't allowed to do Zoom meetings anymore.
seen,
Everything
like-
I've seen from council suggests we can look at that, but I do.
I mean, we have it down as a workshop meeting, but
Yeah.
if that's an option.
Okay. We researched that, Josie. I didn't think you have the ability to vote anymore on anything but Zoom.
As I understand it, we have to have our board meeting the same night that OCS is having their vote, so that we coincide with that.
We can look into it though.
Check it.
And just keep in mind, there's only one meeting set for November and December in this. All right. I'm gonna go ahead then, if anybody has any, this is just to review, send some thoughts back, and then we'll adopt it, all right? So that's homework. Moving on to public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Union School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the consent sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. You know, I've noticed from watching all other board meetings during budget season that sometimes they pass around who reads the policies. That could be something fun we could try. Just a thought. You can think about that one too.
You wouldn't want to take policy away from you, Sarah.
Not go away, President.
I don't have anyone signed up, but if anyone does wish to speak, then please come sign up. The floor is yours. You're welcome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. I hope people will come out though on Saturday for our really fun Saturday morning budget discussion, which will be more informal. Now we're going to move on to acceptance of the minutes. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular business meeting of February 28th, 2024, and the minutes of the special meetings for February 29th, 2024, March 4th, 2024, March 6th, 2024, March 7th, 2024, and March 9th, or March 11th, 2024, as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. Any question on all these minutes?
We were all there.
They were great minutes and you were all there. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Now we have accept the treasurer's report and claims audit report. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the treasurer's report for January 2024 and February 2024 as presented. And further does hereby accept the claims audit report for February 2024 as presented. May I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, does anyone have any questions on the reports as presented? No, okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstention. Thank you. We're going to move on to committee reports and we have finance. So, okay.
Yes, so we met before this meeting today. Discussed obviously the budget presentation, some of the things going into that. Other highlights, you know, we like we discussed earlier, we're a little uncertain today what the state's going to do. We probably won't learn that until April. We're hopeful that they get some of that back, but obviously not within our hands right now. Given that, given kind of some of the other unknowns, we had talked about putting together a 5-year plan before the end of the year, but I think there's good agreement within the committee that we should move that to September. We'll have a new superintendent, we'll have a lot better idea of how some of our budget items for this year land. Transportation, which is going out for bid, we'll know more about that. So if it's okay with the rest of the board, we want to delay that until we get to that part of the year. And finally, the other thing we just talked about was fund balance. Sarah talked a little bit about fund balance right now, well over the 4% that we were mandated to have. And that means we need to move some of that to some different funds. But again, we have a lot of things that are still up in the air. So we'd like to do that toward the end of the year, get together in May as a finance committee and talk to Carl and Joe about how we should allocate some of that fund balance in the different funds, and then we can put it to a vote and present it to the board in May, put it to a vote in June. So those are the highlights of the budget meeting today. If anybody has any questions?
I think it makes a lot of sense to put out the 5-year plan, as you said, as with so many unknowns.
They mentioned today, I'd like to see what the, when we bring in a new superintendent, maybe use the word retreat times or talk about initiatives.
Make sure that not boxing yourself in.
And of course, Saturday, there's the budget forum. So we'll see.
I hope a lot of people turn out.
I think we'll have snow this year.
That was one of my favorite moments. Joe presenting and picking up the shovel, changing his shoes, putting on his boots, and shoveling us out so that we could all go home from it.
Dusty, will there be a reminder communication sent out to the community that they're about budget forum on Saturday?
I sent one out this evening and I'll send another one out on Friday. We'll also have it in the newsletter.
Okay, all right. There's any other questions or comments for Ken? Thank you. Now we move on to CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approved the Committee on Special Education, CSE Committee on Preschool Special Education, CPSE recommendations and student placements. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Moving on to the consent agenda. Be it resolved, Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
See, I don't need to abstain to appoint myself to show up here very early, does it? I will come open the polls. Be here very early on election day. All right. Anyone else have any questions on the personnel consent agenda as presented? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. Moving on to new business. All right. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves the new business items as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? This is a lot of welfare contracts, which we are required to do. It's also the approval of the real property tax service contract. No questions? All right, and keep us moving then.
Yep, those are all routine
Great.
things.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. You. This brings us to the public comment, second public comment of this evening. I'm not going to read the paragraph again, although I do think it would be fun if we don't turn. Anyway, all right, anyone wishing to speak? Okay. Good. I'm going to move on to board member comment and other discussion. Jocelyn. No comment. David.
No comment.
Jennifer.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Dusty for helping us through all the special meetings over the last 2 weeks.
If you could pass out the rest of the white pea soup.
That would be good. That's really good.
So for the public that wasn't here, we did have a number of evenings where we were interviewing candidates for the superintendent, and Dusty provided us with dinner each night. She comes.
Not
All of
just
us want
ordered
to
in.
kidnap her and take her home.
No, great way to keep us showing up. My pleasure. That was down to like making the homemade chocolate covered pretzels.
Delicious.
Next session. Dan, anything else?
No comment.
Courtney? No comment? Kent?
No comment.
All right, just want to take 1 second. I know we're going to get out to executive session. I will be speaking with that reporter that you spoke to. Is there anything you guys want me to make sure I mentioned about the district and the green ribbon?
Are you sure the 800-page application? That we all.
That again. All right, I'll take a look at that.
Just add that to your, you can watch a board meeting and then read through the.
Sounds like a
Some
fun
housing
night. Excited. All right, but first, we're gonna go to exec session. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of discussing the employment history of a particular person and to receive legal counsel. May I have a motion, please? So moved. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstention. We will adjourn without any further action being taken. Thank